Welcome to CohnReznick's webinar, Maximizing Promotional Spend in Today's Digital World. Thank you for joining us. In the digital economy, business leaders must leverage innovative strategies to bolster growth while responding to intense market forces. With digital and overall marketing budgets increasing, today's CFO must see a financial return on marketing initiatives. During this webinar, we will discuss new trends in converting marketing investment into revenue and profitable growth, in addition to optimizing advertising and promotional spend. We will also share best practices in building effective programs that drive customers through the sales funnel, as well as cutting-edge methods to measure and course-correct program performance. We will be conducting a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. I will now hand it over to our panel. First, Paul Golban, who heads up CohnReznick's Digital and Innovation Services practice. Mario Pompeo, leader of CohnReznick's CFO Advisory Practice, and joining us from Synapse SEM, co-founder Mark Casali.
Thank you and a warm welcome to our audience. I'm Paul Golban, and we're glad you're with us today. We have an outstanding agenda and two very knowledgeable panelists. Mario Pompeo will represent the CFO point of view, and then we'll have Mark Casali taking on the side of the Chief Marketing Officer. So let's get right into it. Mario, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your experiences with this topic.
Sure, Paul. Glad to be here. Began my career in a Big Four public accounting firm where I spent about 12 years before moving on to an internal audit role in the wake of the release of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. After that, spending there about 3 years at a large conglomerate of consumer services, I moved on to become the Chief Audit Executive of a women's apparel company. Spent about 6 years there before becoming the Chief Financial Officer of a women's shoe and accessory company before coming back into professional services with CohnReznick at the end of 2015. Now, with respect to this specific topic, I would tell you that CFOs are challenged now with making sure that they have the right solutions, asking the right questions, and understanding exactly how the marketing team is driving revenue for the business. With the growing white noise around digital and marketing analytics, it's extremely important to keep your eyes on the trends that matter and not the promises that don't. For marketers in charge of brand strategy, these advances in analytics mean more data-driven inspiration for their creative teams, but more accountability for what does and doesn't work. CFOs are looking to better connect with their marketing teams on the front lines using analytics, research, and consumer insights to best determine how these new digital and analytic platforms will help their teams have a bigger impact on revenue growth. Marketers who understand what's driving revenue will be able to speak to the CFO as an equal partner. Rather than limiting the discussions to marketing funnel metrics and lead gen performance, marketers can now offer new insights to senior leadership around how to accelerate success.
Excellent. Thank you, Mario, and I loved your comment regarding the trends that matter and the promises that don't. So let's welcome in Mark. Mark, tell us a little bit about your background and your perspective of the CMO.
Thanks, Paul. Sure. Yeah. My name is Mark Casali, and I'm the co-founder of Synapse SEM. We're a full-service digital marketing agency focused on customer acquisition and lead generation specifically. Now, personally, I have the benefit of coming to the digital marketing industry with a bit of a unique perspective. I formerly worked as a CPA, which allows me to approach SEM and SEO through more of a financial lens. And it's that type of data and bottom line focused mindset that has really helped set Synapse apart as an agency. And as far as advances in digital go, I think we're dealing with somewhat of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we can really start digging deeper and exploring the relationship between marketing's outputs and company performance. On the other hand, these advances also mean that we're faced with higher expectations. CFOs want us to communicate our direct impact on revenue, and rightly so. Marketers who get this right and understand what's driving revenue have a huge advantage, as Mario said, in that they're going to be able to speak to CFOs in their own language.
Okay, that's double-edged sword analogy is just awesome. I really like that. And great. Measuring performance is the top priority of the CFO, and the best CMOs understand why revenues are going up or down and what to do about it, more importantly. So we're going to demonstrate these concepts today. But before we move into the advertising and promotional spend segment, let's cover off on some new trends and best practices that help convert marketing investment into revenue growth. Trend number one, a recent Gartner survey stated that 46% of marketers will spend less on predictive analytics and more on something called explanatory analytics. These are analytics driven by curiosity and intuition. CMOs are relying on explanatory analytics to investigate the correlations that matter versus pure machine output. What's an example, Mario?
Sure. Yeah, the best thing I can think of here, Paul, is a CMO walking into a board meeting after a successful quarter with great results, but he can't tell the board why they've been successful. Therefore, that's not a real win. But when a CMO walks into a board meeting with mixed results, but can tell the board why those results were mixed and possibly what to do about it next quarter, backed by the right data correlation that tie to the KPIs that the board cares about, that's a great meeting and will more readily get the budget approved next time.
Yeah, this is what reminds me of what we call dashboard paralysis in our firm. Having the data is great, but you have to take the next step, which is using human intuition to explore the data and asking the questions that will help you explain, not just predict, marketing's impact on revenue.
Great point. So trend 2 considers that, we kind of moved back to the early digital days where we found that social listening platforms by themselves didn't actually drive much revenue growth. Platforms like Social Studio or Brandwatch offered a lot of slick visualizations of social activity, but most of the time they lacked any actual correlation of data. Marketers should be on guard to make sure they're looking at data correlations and not just data coincidences.
Right, and here's an example of this. You might find that the number of tweets about your brand were up in December after an ad buy during Monday Night Football. And let's say you also see a jump in revenue. The thing is, you have to consider it's the holiday season and companies across the globe are experiencing a seasonal jump in buzz and earnings, and maybe this year the U.S. economy was particularly strong. Who knows? So how do we really assess the real impact of the ad buy?
Great point, both of you. The whole concept of not trusting social performance data based on coincidence. I like the point before, Paul, coincidence rather than the correlation. Having just two parallel lines on a graph, one for buzz and one for revenue, will only get you into trouble. Smart and savvy CFOs are going to ask very pointed questions around how marketing analytics correlate findings and directly correlate to revenue or other important conversions or channel KPIs, down to the persona or even personalized levels.
I agree. It's easy these days to connect data stored across channels for a single complete view of the customers. For example, many companies take what a customer is doing on Facebook at the beginning of a customer journey and act on that data in another application, such as paid advertising or digital marketing on that end. So it's a part of that journey as well, too. Which brings us to trend number 3. A 2015 Forrester study found that 74% of CIOs want to be data-driven, while only 29% of those same people could say their firms are good at translating analytics into measurable data outcomes. According to Forrester, 3 out of 4 CFOs say their CMO lacks business credibility because they don't articulate how they drive revenue or conversion.
And let's be fair to all the marketers in the room, KPI data has not traditionally rested in the hands of marketing. It typically resides with operations, sales, finance, and it's often locked in CRMs and other legacy systems. So most marketers, the reality is, have to expend considerable political capital to get a hold of the truth data that matters most. So this is things like customer LTV, frequency of purchase, cost of goods sold, close rates, churn, all this data that critically affects ROI, but oftentimes we don't have it.
Good point, Mark. And I think the best marketers are those who are going to progressively tap into those explanatory analytics, and therefore will be better able to barter for their access to critical KPIs in exchange for delivering a deeper understanding of how to improve those KPIs and those conversion rates. And this is going to benefit those CMOs seeking to deepen their relationship with the broader C-suite.
I really see something here. In short, marketers should be a go-to resource for understanding why revenue moves the way it does, perhaps more aligned to the chief revenue officer versus the CIO. There's been so much in the press and out there that I've been reading about how the chief marketing officer is going to be spending more than the CIO and overtaking the CIO. I think the best marketers provide the most intelligent and actionable insights into how to grow revenue versus a demo of the cool social media dashboard running on an iPad and being, tied up with the latest shiny gadgets.
Amen to that, Paul. That's the kind of CMO I would want to work with as a CFO.
I agree. It's not an easy thing, but it's necessary and it's achievable.
Okay, so let's move to trend 4, which is all about social. And as a digital marketer, I love social data. However, there's a fair amount of filtering needed to find a voice in all that data and static. We do say static. At Cohen-Resnick, we find that approximately half of all social data in its raw form is pure garbage, spam, bots, other distortions that have to be removed and cleansed before you even begin to see what's relevant. Moreover, once you filter out all the noise, the sentiment that's left over usually doesn't mean anything by itself. It's not just about getting to clean data that represents real consumers' organic thoughts. It's about finding those meaningful signals with that clean data to correlate back to the KPIs that matter that Mario mentioned earlier. So Mark, what should a CMO do to diversify data streams and identify these signals?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question, Paul. I think the biggest opportunity right now is blending consumer attributes with financial transactions to better understand where consumers spend money and why. And right now we're seeing a major transition in the industry from traditional anonymous page view reporting, this is the way a Google Analytics would report, to event-based analytics, which tracks at the customer level by user. And probably the biggest platform out there is Kissmetrics right now. We also see the proliferation of front-end customer identity and social data tools, which allow us to customize ads, website content, and CTAs to individual personas or user groups.
Right. Mark, I think great lesson learned there, right? The CFO needs more metrics like tweet volume, retweets, likes, etc. And good CFOs should challenge or work with their CMOs to blend in customer attributes and patterns that reveal the real human intent in the data to drive that conversion.
That's an interesting point. Work with, which brings us to trend number 5. Change is in everybody's competitive landscape these days, and companies are going to continue to accelerate over the next several years with the advent of digital and a highly competitive, slow growth marketplace. So it's requiring marketers to move with added agility and speed. Customer reactions to campaigns and marketing tactics are just going to be moving at lightning speed, and it's going to require marketers to become increasingly innovative and ingenious in their overall approaches.
You got it, Paul. Look, the bottom line is the days of the multi-quarter trial balloons with marketing budgets are gone. Marketers are now able to know within weeks what is and what isn't working and what is having the right desired growth on revenue. What's more, CFOs are going to increasingly expect this accountability from their marketing teams. There's going to be fewer excuses to burn money once it's evident that a campaign's misguidance is not working.
Right, and we're seeing these traditional cycles of planning, executing, measuring, adjusting, breaking down. I think that's a good thing too, but unfortunately, the processes that allocate resources against that cycle remain antiquated and annual. For example, at Synapse, we're continuously testing for clients. It might be ad copy testing, might be landing page A/B tests, and we're often rapidly uncovering learnings. Unfortunately, we're not able to act on those learnings until 2, 3, sometimes 4 quarters later. So this mismatch in timing is going to continue to cause friction for agile marketing, but I do think agile marketing will remain vital, and it's definitely here to stay.
That's a very innovative concept, guys. And at Cohen-Resnick, we see agile marketing is on the rise as well. So to the audience, be ready. Both CFOs and CMOs should push for a more agile planning and budgeting process that drives continuous refinement, almost like in 52-week cycles, like a retailer would in a weekly leaflet or a grocery. Perfect. So let's move on to the next segment and talk a little bit about what some of the key predictions are in 2016. If you look at some of the big systems integrators out there, they have a lot of trends related to where the marketing is going in 2016. So let's do a little bit of a rapid fact or fiction pop quiz. Okay, so we'll go through each trend And Mario, I'm going to ask you to make a quick comment related to the particular topic, explaining if you agree with it, that being fact. And then if it's fiction, Mark, just let us know it's fiction and what your point of view is on related to that topic. So the first trend is delivering a connected customer experience becomes increasingly critical for companies. Mario, fact or fiction?
Fact. I think the whole customer experience now has to be connected. Everything from your social media all the way through to your experience on the website. I think that has to be a very connected experience to generate the revenue growth that we're looking for.
I'll second that. I'd say fact, and I think it's indisputable at this point. As we're going to talk about later, there are often numerous touch points throughout the customer purchase journey, and you have to be present with the right content and calls to action for each of those touch points.
Excellent. Social media and automation will combine in new ways to improve the customer journey. Mario, fact or fiction?
A fact again, Paul. I think it cannot be understated how important social media is. Years ago, a newspaper ad may have been sufficient to get somebody to buy your product. Now everybody's on their phone. They're looking for different ways to touch base with the products that they're interested in, and social media is critical.
Great. What do you say, Barn?
Agreed. Fact. And I think personalization vis-a-vis social data is becoming necessary to stay competitive. It's probably the lowest hanging fruit to increase conversion rate on more mature sites right now.
Excellent. Key trend number 3, video and responsive email moves into the center stage of the marketing mix. Mario, fact or fiction?
Again, fact, Paul. I mean, I'm talking about coming from the luxury market where it was extremely important. Video cannot be understated. Using talent and having that talent wear your products and have those products on their feet or carrying that handbag was absolutely critical to the marketing effort.
Mark?
I think every member of the C-suite is probably in agreement on this one. You need great user experience to engage that ever-increasing segment of users on mobile and tablet devices.
Okay. Trend number 4, leading companies use predictive technology to further distance their competitors from the pack. Fact or fiction?
On this one, Paul, maybe I'm going to lean toward fiction here. In the future, we may be there, but right now, I'm not sure we're quite there yet. As we explained earlier in the program, I think there's a lot more emphasis on explanatory analytics, and right now, I probably, as a CFO, have a little bit more faith in those explanatory analytics.
Yeah, I'll say fact, but I'll concede that somewhat surprisingly, it's not a big part of digital optimization today. So if you're leveraging predictive, you're ahead of the game, I think.
Super. And finally, trend number 5, loyalty programs expand across channels and touch points.
Again, I'd say fact again. I think loyalty programs are extremely important. While they may not have played as big a role in the luxury market, I think there's a ton of consumer companies where the luxury program is a key attribute to getting that customer to come back and buy your product.
It's a fact for me. Frequency of purchase is such a critical metric for most e-commerce businesses. So if you can increase that metric globally across multiple channels, all the better. So for a channel like SEM, the market rates for bids are going to be set by companies with strong loyalty programs. So if your firm doesn't have similar recapture programs in place, you're almost automatically operating at a financial disadvantage.
Great. Gentlemen, very insightful trends, and thanks for sharing your thoughts and perspectives. Okay, so let's move on to the topic of optimizing advertising and spend promotion. Digital media is on track to overtake television as the #1 media category, reaching over $68 billion in advertising revenue in 2016, according to the Interpublic Group. The hottest category, mobile, is expected to rise 44%. Advertising on social media is forecasted to rise 31% to over $13.8 billion, and online video looks to increase by 40% to over $8.8 billion in spend. So let's start with the CFO's perspective, Mario. Besides these statistics, why should your business consider shifting from traditional advertising budgets to digital?
Well, Paul, I think it's all about increased efficiency. Look, advertising dollars can be more easily monitored, plus the management and adjustments to the campaigns can happen quicker. By improving your campaign metrics and tracking ability, your advertising budget will increase in effectiveness, minimizing the wasted spend.
Right. I agree with that efficiency argument. And I think that the benefit of digital is that it enables us to take a conversion-oriented approach to marketing, mainly because of our targeting capabilities. Targeting on social, for example, has evolved from these vague interest categories to what's now robust demographic targeting, email list targeting, lookalike audiences, and behavior targeting. We now have the ability to target, this is just an example, a user who is demographically consistent with one of our known customers, who just got engaged, who shows a propensity to purchase online. It's really unbelievable stuff. So social media advertising is no longer just a branding and content delivery play. It's a viable and now efficient platform for lead gen and customer acquisition.
Great. So what about search? Consumers are searching during the buying cycle. We find that almost 90% of all consumers use Google to learn and research before making a purchasing decision. What say you, Mark?
Yeah, in my opinion, Paul, a keyword is still the most powerful targeting criteria available to a marketer. The other thing is that a search engine marketing campaign will reach consumers as they actively search for your products or services. So you're only serving ads to self-qualified prospects. I'd say it's inbound marketing at its finest. With cost per click bidding, you might hear that referred to as CPC. You're also only charged when someone clicks your ad, so it offers a lower risk, more variable cost structure.
And don't forget about tracking capabilities, right? The best practice companies test and track digital advertising campaigns, having the tracking mechanisms in place to help determine the best platforms for your digital advertising budget. For example, what channels are helping you to achieve your business goals? Tracking phone numbers, placing goals on the website with source tracking, special offers for in-store traffic, and even A/B testing of creative and landing pages will help determine how well the goals set are being achieved and what modifications you should make to improve your results.
Guys, this is a great setup. So Mario, how does a CFO view the shifting advertising and promotional spend on digital marketing budgets?
You got it, Paul. Well, if you look at the one slide that's in our deck here, right? The marketing budget now is about 10% of the total percent, based on a percentage of revenue, is about 10% now. Mm-hmm. If you think about the fact that cost of sales and personnel costs are probably the two highest percentages of your expense budget, marketing comes in third. It used to, this 10% bucket, probably only a few years ago, was only around 7%. Furthermore, if you shift to the second column, if you look at the digital spending now on overall marketing dollars is about 35% of that budget. That number is also growing. So I think for a CFO to have a really good grasp of what is going on with the digital spend and the chief marketing officer being able to explain to the CFO why that increased spend is justified is extremely important with today's metrics.
We're facing a very interesting dilemma in the digital marketing world, and this relates back to that double-edged sword we talked about in the beginning. Everything we do in the digital world is ultra-measurable, which is a very exciting thing to marketers and CFOs alike. But interestingly, we've all almost jumped the gun about how we're looking at this data, and the industry has made some very dangerous assumptions. The biggest mistake, in my opinion, is that companies are now looking at siloed data and not data across the entire customer buying journey.
So siloed data, what exactly do you mean by that, Mark?
So Paul, there are 5 core traffic sources or channels that drive traffic to your website. So we have direct traffic, that's a user who's direct navigating, typing in www.coneresnick.com to get to your site. There's organic or SEO, search engine optimization traffic, where somebody's using a search engine like Google, Yahoo, or Bing to search on a keyword. They might take that same search on a search engine like Google and click a paid ad. That's going to fall into the bucket we call SEM or paid pay-per-click advertising. And there are other channels like referral as well. Referral is a click-through to your site from a third-party website like a Facebook. And fifth channel might be something like email. You might carve that out as its own independent traffic source. Now the perception.
So I get email, I get the revenue and direct. Referral is a little bit new, might be a little bit new to me here because I read about that a lot. Can you give us an example in maybe more detail about referral based?
Sure.
Traffic.
So you might promote, Paul, a new blog that your company put out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and you might link back to that article in your little post. The click-through on that type of social link is going to be bucketed into the referral traffic source. Right? You could also have referrals from third-party websites who maybe do a review of your product. Let's say, you're a retailer and you have a new product line coming out and you have a fashion blogger who's writing about your product line, and they might attribute credit back to you, link back to your website. People who click through on that link will also get it.
I get it now. So if I'm on Facebook and I walk into the store and I see there's having a sale on clothes that I like, I could hit Facebook, I like it, and that's a referral-based marketing message out to all my friends on Facebook.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
So the perception is that these channels operate autonomously and single-handedly generate conversions. And we say conversions, we're talking about sales or transactions. While this is sometimes true, it's definitely not common. And yet, this is how marketing is reporting back to finance. The reality is that these channels work in concert and have a tremendous amount of influence over one another. A user often interacts with multiple or even all of these traffic sources before becoming a customer. So that begs the question, which channel should get credit for producing a conversion, or conversely, the blame for failing to produce a conversion? Right now, we live in a last click world where the last step, the last interaction before that conversion, that transaction, gets all the credit. And for many organizations, that is a deeply flawed reporting methodology. Now, we have a sample customer journey outlined on the bottom of this slide where a user first comes to the website through a pay-per-click ad, right? So we have a keyword out there. They do a search on that keyword. They click our ad. We're going to assume that's a non-branded keyword. They browse our product line, do a little bit of research. They leave, okay? Maybe next day, they say, oh, I saw some cool stuff on that site. I'm going to come back. I'm going to search that keyword again. Maybe I'm searching even the brand name of the company I looked at. I come back organically through a Google listing. Do a little bit more research, maybe put something in my cart, but I leave again, all right? And then that day I check what's in my cart, consider whether I'm ready to pull the trigger on this. I leave one last time. Finally, the next morning, I come back again to the site through a keyword search, SEO. The way that we're reporting right now is that last visit, that fourth SEO visit, is going to get 100% of the credit for that transaction. But this transaction would have never occurred without that initial pay-per-click hit.
That's a great point, Mark. Now, my question would be is, what does a marketer need to do, though, to convince the CFO that the money is being spent in the right place?
So, Mauro, this is where the concept of attribution arises. And first off, let's define it. Attribution is simply the methodology of assigning credit to the different traffic sources that influence a conversion. It's really a reporting decision. Do I care more about the first interaction a user had with my site, the last, or maybe even something in between?
Great. Now, how would a CFO start thinking about the right attribution model to use for his or her organization?
Sure. Yeah. We need to consider things like our industry, brand equity is a big one, and also our sales cycle. If I'm a B2B with lower brand equity, the most valuable question I can ask a customer is, how did you hear of us? In the digital world, you just asked, what was your first interaction with my site? Mm-hmm. You can already see that this type of organization would benefit from first-click reporting. Conversely, if you're a powerhouse B2C company, you don't care how people found you. You care about what sealed the deal. Nike is never going to ask you, hey, how'd you hear about us? They might, however, ask, what made you purchase today? This is where a last-click attribution model might be more appropriate. So we've talked through some of the differences between first and last-click reporting, but there are other models available to us to fit specific situations. There's things like time decay, where we give more credit to the steps that are closer to the transaction. So that leans towards last click, but it's a hybrid model. There's also position-based, where the first click, first interaction a user had with our site gets 40% of the credit. The last click gets 40% of the credit. Everything in between linearly gets the remaining 20%. There is also that true linear model where every step in the process gets equal pro rata credit. And for other situations, every company is different. There are custom models that can be deployed.
Okay, that's great. So, Mark, let's get back to Mario's question related to attribution. Could you walk us through a case study to demonstrate these different attribution models?
Sure. Let's get into the data. And this is real customer data from Synapse. We've changed the name here to protect the innocent, but the example still applies here. So we have a fictional company here, B2C, online retailer of luxury goods, glamourbag.com. Relatively new player in the space, low brand equity. Nobody's really searching for our brand name. Sales cycle, this is a high ticket order here, average order value $950. So on average, consumers are taking 7 to 45 days to complete that transaction. Don't really have an outbound sales team, and repeat purchases relatively low so far. We're really after that first initial purchase.
Okay.
So let's look at some specific data here. We're going to say here this is part of the historical story that we run a non-branded pay-per-click program on Google targeting terms like luxury bags, designer handbags, etc.
So just excuse me for interrupting. What does that mean? That concept, just in layman's terms,
Sure. Yeah. So we're brainstorming keywords that users might search, prospective customers that might be interested in our products, right?
Okay.
So we sell luxury goods, we sell luxury bags. We want to show up in the search engines when people search those terms.
I see. So you came out with the concept of fancy handbags in this particular example.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So one of those top performing terms is that fancy handbags, and we're going to look at data across different attribution models for that term. Now, the client has determined that they can be profitable at an ROI of 2.0, and we're defining ROI as revenue divided by Google ad spend. Okay. The cost column here is simply our average cost per click, our CPC, multiplied by click volume. Now, the cost of our promotional spend is not going to differ by attribution model because a click is a click, whether it comes as the first step in a user's purchase journey or the last. The revenue column is what we're really after here. This is where data is going to differ depending on our attribution model. So let's look at what this data reveals. On a last click basis, remember, this is how we report today to finance, many companies. This channel appears to be inefficient and losing money. If you're a CFO charged with tightening up profitability, you're going to cut this channel or at least this keyword if your CMO hands you this data. But look at what first click attribution shows.
Yeah.
If we look at the performance for users who first arrived to our site through a pay-per-click ad, people who started their buying journey via a PPC ad, we see that pay-per-click far exceeds our ROI goal, and then it's a major source of revenue. So this model comparison data shows us that PPC might not be great at closing sales, but it's very effective in getting potential buyers to our site, and that's really what our original goal was with this program.
Yeah. To your point earlier, the buying journey related to different site visits, right? You got to be careful of what exactly you're looking at.
Gotcha. Now, Mark, the question I'd have is, how is a CFO, though, am I convinced that this isn't, voodoo math here, right? You're not just changing a reporting methodology and presenting the data differently to make me make a decision. That might not make sense.
Good question.
I'm glad you asked that, Mark, because everyone always accuses us of cooking the books on this one. But, I really don't think it's just, presentation of the data, so to speak, for two key reasons. First is we're using this data to take actions. The ultimate goal is to understand these traffic sources or channels and understand what actions to take from both a revenue growth and cost-cutting perspective. Two, we're not trying to fix, we are trying to fix, not manipulate our reporting. We're trying to transition to an attribution model that better reflects our business.
Guys, excellent insight. So let's talk a little bit about the bottom line and financial outcomes. Tell us a little bit about what the client experienced here in this scenario that you just explained, Mark.
Sure. So, what does this data really mean? We looked at one specific keyword. Great. What did the rest of the account do? Well, the reality was that this attribution modeling analysis had massive financial repercussions because this first versus last click discrepancy existed not just across one keyword, but thousands of non-branded keywords in our account. And with that in mind, we were able to optimize the allocation of our promotional spend. Shifting to first click reporting gave our client the financial justification to expand their SEM budget and leverage a more aggressive bidding strategy in their SEM campaigns as well. And ultimately, what this meant was significant revenue growth. Instead of cutting a seemingly unprofitable program, the client ended up doubling down on their most important customer acquisition channel, which helped them grow top-line revenue by 20% year over year.
This is great information, Mark, and these are the kind of financial results I can then get behind as a CFO. I love it. So how do I get started doing this?
Sure. Mario, obtaining the data for these different attribution models is actually pretty easy. Most of this data is already available in your analytics platform. In Google Analytics, it's free. It's canned. So if your marketing team is already sending you data, this is probably going to be a simple reporting change. The bigger and more strategic challenge is determining the appropriate model for your business. So we would recommend the meeting between marketing, sales, and finance to brainstorm and discuss how you should be looking at your data. And once you're in agreement, this whole attribution modeling becomes more of a data analysis exercise, both retrospectively and prospectively. And we would recommend, rerun your numbers for the past year and look at the performance delta by traffic sources for different attribution models. Look at how that trend persists with current data. And finally, determine whether this data should be impacting your marketing strategy. Perhaps you could spend more in your most important customer acquisition channel. Perhaps you have an opportunity to increase spend in a channel that is, for the first time, properly exposed as ROI positive. We see it happen all the time, Mario. So these are the types of questions to ask and investigate.
Right. Thanks, Mark.
Great. So excellent case study, and love those trends around conversion, attribution, and obviously the revenue growth numbers are very impressive. So why don't we open it up for questions?
My marketing team falls under me as a small organization, and we started using social media to get our name out there in the retail industry. But I'm concerned that I don't have enough transactional information to know much about these customers. So what would you suggest that I look at to start?
Sure. So, this really gets at what we were talking about when Mario was walking through the digital advertising spend numbers, right? Everybody's pumping more and more money into digital marketing because it's so measurable, right? And that's the beauty of this field, and we want to take advantage of that. So, with social programs, sometimes tracking is a bit of an afterthought, and you can't let that happen. To your point, you want to be able to tie transaction data to all these different social media efforts that you're putting out there. 95+% of companies are on Google Analytics right now, and if that's the case for you, what you'll want to do is just apply tracking parameters to the URLs you use on social. So, Paul and I were talking about that example referral user, right? We put a blog out there about our product line, we post it on Facebook, we link back to our site. We don't want to just link, a raw URL back. We want to put some parameters, they're called UTM parameters, on that URL to be able to tell Google Analytics that this user came from the referral traffic source, but also from Facebook and from, this particular campaign we are running in this month at this time of year, and with this creative and messaging. You can actually granularly track all of those different elements so that when you do have that transaction come in, you can tie it back to a specific social effort.
Which makes sense. And I think a natural extension would be to take those metrics that Mark just outlined and categorize them or group them into revenue metrics, marketing program performance metrics, and profit per customer. And as a CFO, Mario, I think you can agree that taking that deep dive up to the top level really is effective at the board.
It's extremely important.
The second question that we have is, if I had a specific report I was looking to run to get this kind of segmented channel-based information against my transactions, what would it be called? Or how should I ask my CMO for that?
Sure. So I'm going to answer this question from the perspective of Google Analytics because most of our clients and companies out there are going to be on that platform. But the answer applies to the paid analytics platforms like Kenshoes and Marin's out there as well. Within analytics, there is a report called the Model Comparison Tool. And this allows you to pull attribution data for all of your core traffic sources, across all of the different models we talked about, first click, last click, linear, time decay, all these different models, and you can see how performance varies across each advertising effort for each attribution model. So it's the model comparison report, and if you want to communicate this to somebody who's not directly involved with analytics, you're looking for a traffic source report which shows revenue for different attribution models by traffic source.
Yeah, and I think bringing that up again a step further, we always discuss the total channel marketing and sales cost to channel revenue ratio. And that particular ratio in most organizations takes the total cost of sales, including channel marketing and other investments, and that ratio needs to be less typically than 30% of revenue is what we're finding with high growth type of companies across most organizations related to that. Great questions, great topics. We could go on for hours on this. Excellent. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for joining our webinar today. As you can clearly see, the need and ability to link marketing initiatives with business outcomes has never been more critical in today's digital economy, and also aligning the CFO and CMO agenda is crucial to this process. The CMO must communicate impact in terms of revenue and new market opportunities and become accountable for marketing and spend decisions. And the CFO needs to get a little bit sharper on some of the new trends in digital, affiliate marketing, SEM, SEO, email marketing, social media marketing, and some of the metrics that matter in those areas as well too. But more importantly, advances in analytics and performance indicators have really helped to enable real-time strategy, course of action correction, and improving business outcome as we saw in the case studies today. So thank you very much for joining us, and I'd like to thank our outstanding panel, Mark Casale from Synapse SEM, and Mario Pampero from Resnick Advisory Services on the CFO side. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day.